my relations. Welcome to another program, Eagle and Condor. This is Tony Gonzalez, your host today, Sunday, September 29, 2024. And today, my relatives, let's consider this a continuing thread on Chicano history, Mexican history, and also this being Latino month, September, or Hispanic, although, where nobody's panicked. But we're going to continue, as you might recall, following the program. We had the Xicana Moratorium with speakers and videos with Stan Santos, Gloria Hernandez, and we've had several others, including a lecture by Professor Mario Garcia from UC Santa Barbara, and he lectured on his book. It must have been about 2015, but he lectured on the book called The Chicano Generation, Testimonies of the Movimiento. So this is, consider this a continuation. Today we'll watch a video of a speaking panel on August 31st as part of the Chicano Moratorium, or Xicana Moratorium, that is, in Oakland, as it's referred to. And it was held at the Eastside Arts Alliance there on International Boulevard. And these are, in the video, are speakers headed by the moderator, Dr. Lorenda Gonzalez, and also Francisco Herrera. And Francisco, as you might have hear him sometimes on KPFA radio. Well, this panel discussion was referred to also as the Brown Table discussion. So that included David Morales, also Signate Salazar, and Nancy Pili Hernandez. Outstanding speakers continuing on Chicano history, the Chicano Moratorium, and what they, as the younger generation, as opposed to like ages myself in the 70s, as Chicanos, how do they perceive the future on Chicano Moratorium? So that'd be fantastic if we could stay tuned to that, my relatives. But before we do, just some brief announcements that are coming up for October. It's going to be very busy. For example, there is a Medicine for Nightmare in San Francisco in the Mission District. They proudly present nature art by Alexandria Bloom and Jalisco Robles, and with a special guest artist, Cecile Robles Bloom. Sounds like one of their children, perhaps. So that'd be a special treat, young artists there. This will be from October the 5th to November 26th. Plenty of good time. And the reception is October 5, and that'll be from 3 to 6 p.m., October 5. And for the location, that would be 3036 24th Street in the Mission District, San Francisco. For more information, 415-824-1761, my relatives. 415-824-1761. Also, my relatives, don't forget the Berkeley Powwow is coming up, and this will be the 32nd annual Indigenous Peoples Day powwow in Berkeley, October 12th from 11 to 6 p.m. Be sure you make this. And just to remind you, 1992, Berkeley declared Indigenous Peoples Day on that day for October 12th. And now over 100 cities across the country, North America, have declared Indigenous Peoples Day. If you haven't declared it in your city, do so. And for more information about the Berkeley Powwow, you can go to ipdpowwow.org. That's ipdpowwow.org, my relatives. Also, along with October is Indigenous Peoples Sunrise Gathering at Alcatraz Island, my relatives. So this is to recognize 524 years of Indian resistance across the Americas on Indigenous Peoples Day. This will be on October 14 for Alcatraz. And tickets are now underway. For more information, go to the International Indian Treaty Council, who is the host and sponsor for this event at Alcatraz and that afternoon at the Yerba Buena Gardens in San Francisco. Go to their website, get all this information and the ticket at iitc.org. That's iitc.org, my relatives. And finally, my relatives, just a few more here, just to remind you, November 5th is going to be a very important day for many of us in the United States, and it's a voting time, so vote like your life depends on it, okay? And register to vote. You can register online, and the deadline is October 21. So go to the website at registertovote.ca.gov. That's registertovote.ca.gov for registering. And you can register until November the 5th, but we'll have to do it in person, of course. So mark your ballot. Your vote counts for at least 10 other people and groups of peoples in our society that rely on your vote. So give it up. That one vote that will represent at least 10 other representative peoples, my relatives. And finally, Leonard Peltier, political prisoner in the United States, over 50 years, my relatives. It's time that he come home. Call President Joe Biden. He's the only person that can release Leonard Peltier at 202-456-1111. That's 202-456-1111. Leonard Peltier will not have another parole hearing until 2039. He's 80 years old, my relatives. He's in there for a crime he did not commit. Go to his website for more information at freeleonardpeltiernow.org. All right, my relatives, thank you for your time. Let's go into that video, August 31, 2024, Xicana Moratorium at Eastside Arts Alliance in Oakland, and we'll be listening to people talking about the future of Chicano history and the Xicana Moratorium. I hope.
Not only are children sacred, but they're the future. And right now, the future, híjole, doesn't look good. With climate change, with people denying what's happening y todo eso, there's a crisis. But as la raza, not only do we face climate change, but we face the darkness that's spreading across this country. Pero, how do we combat the darkness? Light, la luz. What is light? Canto, dance, music, art. That's all light. Todo eso es luz. And that's what we have to do. Push the light. We are about paz and dignity. We're about peace and dignity. The other side is about hate and violence. Chale, not with us. We're one gente, and we're part of started with the National Xicana Moratorium 55 years ago that gave birth to the brown civil and human rights movement in this country. Que hacemos nosotros? What kind of power? Brown power. What kind of power?
Brown power.
Who got the power? What kind of power? Eso, that's what we have to shout out and say it loud. So they hear that here in California, We are ready for the storm with música, encanto, y arte. That said, we got a panelist coming here. They're going to be looking at what is this whole idea of the Xicana Moratorium. The moderator is Profesora Ahua Lorena Gonzalez. She identifies herself as a Chicana. Had life experience growing up in San Francisco Tenderloin in the Mission District. She's also part of the Danza Guerrera in the Mexica tradition. I can go on and on and on, but I'm going to hold off on that. The second panelist, Ahua, there she is. Hi, Nancy Hernandez. ¿Qué hubo? Mi don't you know me? Órale. One of the original people working on the Xicana Moratorium back when she was 15. Now she is rising as an elder in the community. I can go on and on and on. But she's been there. I've known her desde que estaba chiquita. She's always been full of fire and a pillar of strength amongst women. Nancy, ¿qué hubo? Nancy Hernandez. Then we also have Sanice Salazar. Sanice Salazar is a first-generation migrante Chicana from East Oakland, all the way from Guadalajara, Jalisco, Tierra del Sol, eso. And educator, grassroots organizer, and has dedicated the last 21 years of his life to organize. Again, we are all organizers in the cultural advancement of our raza. Que se oiga. And finally, we got David Morales, a Chicano counter recruitment activist, eso from San Diego, currently residing in the Bay Area. He is a board president of the grassroots nonprofit organization Project Llano, Youth and Non-Military Opportunities. And again, I can go on and on, pero this panel will address why is it that something that happened 55 years ago, ¿por qué es algo que sucedió hace 55 años is so relevant today? Why is it here today? Because today we are in a government in a country that has perpetual war. Okay? We went from World War II right into the Korean War, right into the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War finished, then there was war in Central America. A lot of gente here, young people here, you were born in war. War, war, war. This United States is a war economy. The good times are rolling when there's war and other people, innocents, are dying other places on the planet. Today, the moratorium says, stop the war in Gaza. On the other side of the world, stop the war against other brown indigenous people. Stop the war now. Now I'm going to turn it over to the panelist, Lorena Gonzalez. Give it up. Join me. Que se oiga! Let it loud! Let's hear the thunder! Eso! Who got the power? What kind of power?
Eso, thank you. Always good to have that Viva la Raza energy. Buenas tardes, everybody. Good afternoon. Like he said, I'm Lorena Gonzalez, and I will be, it's an honor to be here and support in the moderation. And so just to give some guidelines, we're gonna have 5 to 6 questions, and then there's gonna be 10 minutes amongst the three of you for each question. And my brother here, Nuna will help, Francisco will help with the timekeeping, okay? So the first question is really about consciousness for Xicana Moratorium. And so if you can share just your personal story, your inspiration to do this work and how you got involved. And feel free, anybody, to take lead with that.
Wow, I got called almost elder.
I heard, sister. I heard.
Nancy Elder. Hi, my name is Nancy. It's nice to see all of your beautiful faces. Thank you for welcoming me to Fruitvale. Hella respect and love for the indigenous stewards of Fruitvale and for the stewards of this building. Shout out to everybody who has maintained this building and kept this space. Thank you to Angie. Thank you to Serge. Thank you to Susana. Where's Susana? Susan. Thank you to Greg. Thank you to everybody who has swept the floors in this place and kept it going. This place is a sanctuary. This place is a petri dish for activism and for inspiration. So I'm very honored to be here, and I think that. Damn, he called me out on when I was 15 years old because he was doing the radio show and they let me come do the radio show on Friday nights. And I felt like we started Radio Olin at that time, which was a radio component of La Onda Bajita on Friday nights on KPFA. And it gave us a microphone and gave us space to speak about the actions that we were participating in the streets. And so people of our generation coming into organizing, like you, all were introduced into organizing through people who had been part of the Xicana Moratorium. And so we were introduced to Betita Martinez.
Yes.
So I brought her book to think of her and to honor her and to shout out her book. So if you guys haven't read this,
it's a must. It's a must.
Make a note of this book if you haven't read it. Put this on your wish list. Get this in your library and use this in your curriculum. 500 years of Chicano history is a staple in our identity creation. Not just being told who we were, but actually creating who we are to be. And she also made a movie with collision course video of this book. So if you are a teacher or an educator or a parent or just searching for more knowledge, the book is also made into a movie so you can show it with imagery and moving and pictures. And so that I would say that was part of my consciousness development, was that she told us the story of her being at the Xicana Moratorium. And she remembered her outfit. She was cute, always red lipstick till the day she went out, like necklaces and huipiles, and always proud of who she is. And so Betita really inspired us with her story of being a young person who was put on the stage at the moratorium in 1979, before we were even born. And she told us about how that day impacted her life and her activism, and that she had her daughter with her. When they went up to the stage, she was in line to speak on behalf of the Bay Area Organizing Committee and the work that she had been doing with she made a newspaper and published a newspaper. And so she was an editor, and she was a meticulous editor, like no typos. So I hear Jesus Barraza in the background laughing right now. Where is he? Yeah, I heard your laugh because he worked on a lot of he put art onto her designs, which is hard. It was hard because she was meticulous. But as an editor, she taught us to be meticulous. Nobody else at my life at that point had ever scolded me for being late, but she was scold us for being late. And she taught us to try to be on time, and I'm still working on it, but at least for her, I tried, because I wanted to pick her up and take her to whatever she wanted to go to. And I had a 62 Impala at the time, so she loved it when I would pick her up and take her to things. And I think Betita's impact on all of us was that she was willing to share her story with us. As an elder, she opened up her backyard and she taught us things about our culture that we were hungry to know. And so I encourage all of us who are now casi elders to open up our spaces for young people and tell the stories of what we saw, because we were inspired by her life to the point where many of us have changed our life paths. And I know Dina has taught classes and used her curriculum. So young people have grown up seeing her imagery and seeing her art and knowing that we have a name and we have a people and we have a direction. Which, before I had met the Xicana Moratorium folks, I didn't really know what my direction was. I just knew I was angry, but I didn't have a direction of who I was angry at. I was kind of angry at people who looked just like me, but maybe wore a different color. And I think by being influenced by the Xicana Moratorium folks, I realized that we have been twisted and turned around in this creation of all these identities that mean nothing.
Yes.
And that when they've told us who we are in all of these different ways, we're Latino, we're this, we're Hispanic, we're that. None of those words have spirit. None of those words have heart. Those are labels that have been put on us to categorize us and put us in a box. And so I was very excited to meet Betita and hear about her lessons, because she said that we have a purpose on this planet which is longer than the Spanish have colonized any place. And that our purpose on this planet is to defend land and life, and that is what we are here for. And that maybe we have gotten twisted and we're warriors against this and we're warriors against that, but that we are a people who create more people who are good for this place. And that is what we are here to do. And I think that that orientation set me on a path that has kept me out of some trouble. Gotten me into a lot of other trouble, though, but that's a
Good trouble.
different
Good
question.
trouble.
So good trouble, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why I have the book of Yolanda Lopez with me. So Yolanda Lopez encouraged us to cause a ruckus. She didn't say to be quiet artists. Yolanda Lopez said be an artist who flips everything over and then makes art out of whatever lands. And that's what she did with her life. Every time that there was a catastrophe in her life, she turned it into an art project. When she got evicted, she made it an art project, because it wasn't only about her eviction. It was about the entire Mission District, and it was about all of the neighborhoods facing gentrification. So I brought the book of Yolanda Lopez because the Xicana Moratorium folks introduced me to her and her work and her life. And so if you guys have not seen her book, she has Portrait of the Artist by Yolanda Lopez that came out recently. And her art is now being installed right now today in the Cheech Marin Museum. Yes. So if anybody wants to road trip to go visit, it's opening, I think, the 19th. And I would love it if people would be able to see her new exhibit, which is, she has passed away, but her art is now going to be on display at this museum, the Cheech Marin Museum. And it is called A Woman's Work is Never Done. And so I think the influence of those two women I was introduced to by the Moratorium folks, and I definitely credit with me not being a little punk because they were not. And then I also feel like the Moratorium introduced me to Ruben Salazar, which, did you know there's a book with all his writing? So shout out to this book because this is awesome. There's what's this guy's name? Rupert Garcia? Rupert Garcia is the screen print. Thank you, Professor of Race and Resistance from UC Berkeley, for the affirmation of the name of the artist. Rupert Garcia prints silkscreen posters of many influential people. And so when I was at the KPFA office, I saw his art up on the wall, and I didn't know who he was or any of those images, but it forced me to want to learn everybody he screen printed and read about them. So thank you to Malakias and to Chewy and everybody who's spent time screen printing, because the posters that you make are not just decorations on our walls. They're assignments for us to follow up on and make sure that we know who these people are. And so this book has all of the writing of Ruben Salazar, all his articles, when he went to Vietnam, what he saw, when he went to the Brown Berets, what he saw. And so he was documenting for the LA Times our stories. That's why they shot him in the head with the tear gas canister. And so if anybody wants to check this out, I'll have it with me today and you can look at it. But definitely you can find it. If you can't find it, get it, because this is awesome and it has his voice. And so I definitely appreciate the Xicana Moratorium putting me into spaces where I was able to learn more than what they were just teaching us in school, which then made me disgruntled because school wasn't teaching us anything, and then made me organize with this squad of people to demand ethnic studies. So thank you.
Woo! Thank you. Thank you. And I think highlighting, right, the importance of that personal connection, right, and oral tradition of storytelling, right? And it's one thing to read them, but to have that relationship is beautiful. How about you?
Again, just like Nancy said, so grateful to be in the space with all of you. And being in an intergenerational space is a beautiful thing. Yes. This actually locale, but Eastside Arts Alliance was one of the first places when it was down the street somewhere, was one of the first places where I was introduced to movement work. I, as a undocumented migrant, came in 1991. So when I came here to the States, I was kind of hit with a lot of righteous anger for the impact of Prop 187, Prop 209. I remember when I was in elementary school, our teachers were on strike, right? So I was angry as but didn't really have words to talk about what was going on. I knew the impacts of poverty. I knew the impacts of the fact that my parents had to work 3 jobs and get paid cents for their job, or often not get paid because they didn't have a right to a job with wages or healthcare or anything of that sort, right? I remember my pops getting hurt and having to wait at Highland and not being able to get help. So now his 2 of his fingers are like, his carne molida, because he didn't have health insurance, and at that time, if you're undocumented, you weren't going to get served, right? So I remember being angry, and just like Nancy said, that anger turned into being a knucklehead out in the street and being angry towards my own folks from the same color, wearing different colors on their attire, right? And so as a way to get me out of trouble, my parents made me get into some programming, and I was fortunate enough to get into programming, a multiracial organization founded by some of the folks that come from this space. Greg Montezuma was one of the founders of Youth Together. Gabriel Hernandez, who's also a founder of Xicana Moratorium Coalition out here in the Bay Area, was a founder of Youth Together. And Millie Cleveland, who is still doing work out here in Oakland, was also one of the founders. So I was fortunate enough to be with some of these amazing elders that taught us so much discipline and gave us words for what we were feeling, right? I learned about the fight for third world liberation. I got a chance to be in space with folks from MOVE. For those of you guys who don't know, MOVE from Philadelphia, who were bombarded, right? For trying to liberate their people, right? For making soaps, for teaching their kids, they were bombarded by the US government for trying to be free, right? For protesting for animal rights. And I got a chance to be in a movie theater in Oakland with Africa Ramona, right? I got an opportunity to sit with Yuri Kochiyama. I got an opportunity, who was the person, for those of you guys who don't know, and I know I got a lot of elders in the space, right? But the woman who held Malcolm X's head and marched with us out here in the streets of Oakland in a wheelchair, right? When she was well in her 70s, right? Still putting in that work. I got an opportunity to be with these elders, and that's what got me into this work, right? I was really committed to my multiracial organizing work with with Youth Together. And so when I was, one of the things that I learned around third world resistance was that we had to, the most important thing that folks like MOVE or folks like the Black Panthers did was reconnect, refined, and re-engage with the things that were stolen from us, that were burned from us, that were beaten out of us, like our language, our culture, our history, our traditions, our songs, our dances, right? And so when I was introduced into the Xicana movement and into Xicana Moratorium space, I gravitated towards that, towards my identity and towards the dances, towards the song. Xicana Moratorium, one of the things that they teach us is that identity is a big piece, and part of identity is not only the songs, the dances, but it's also about understanding our purpose on this world, right? Understanding that we have a role to protect land and life, to protect all our relations, right? And that's not only our brothers and sisters in Palestine and Congo and Sudan. That's also about protecting the winged, and about protecting the trees, and about the role that we have to protect our seeds, right? So all these fights are super connected, right? This fight taught me to do something with my anger in a way where I knew exactly what I had to do, right? And so, my work has been that sense of being able to, for myself, be able to rid myself of these generational traumas that put us in these cycles where we harm ourselves and harm others, but also to be able to support the younger generation and being able to do the same thing, right? And understanding their history and their culture, and understanding that disciplina, and connecting with our elders, right? And being able to know that we can't see the world falling apart and not do anything. But it's not only about being out in a march, but it's also how you eat, where you throw your trash away, right? What you do on a day-to-day, right? How you pray, right? It's all of that. It's all that connection. And so I was super fortunate to be able to be in space with people that understood those connections and taught me that. And so I'm still here, and I'm gonna be here, hopefully till I'm,
Yes.
as long as God lets me live, right?
Thank you. And thank you for bringing in the solidarity, right? Because a lot of, we want to also break the silo of Chicanismo being just in a box, right? And it's about unity and solidarity and the importance of intergenerational teachings. And it's reciprocal, right? Because we learn from our elders, and also our elders also thrive through from us as well. So thank you for that. David, how about you? You had your consciousness.
Yeah, first, I really want to say that it's such an honor to be here. I share the same sentiments as my compas here. It's such an honor to be here present with you all. My name is David. I'm from San Diego. So in many ways, even though I've been in the Bay Area now for several years, I consider myself a guest here. And I think that it's I feel really fortunate, and I feel such a privilege to be able to spend some of my life here in the Fruitvale in Oakland, to be able to organize, to be able to teach with, work with. Nancy and I taught at the same school, actually in San Francisco, June Jordan School for Equity. So I want to say that, and to be in the presence of some of you who have been doing this work in this geography, it's such an honor. And like I said, I'm from San Diego. I grew up in San Diego. For those of you who are familiar, San Diego is a very militarized location, a very militarized city. As far as I can remember, my dad worked at NASCO, the National Steel and Shipbuilding Company, down the street from Chicano Park, down the street from the plot of land that the community would come to take over in 1970. My dad worked at this shipyard, essentially repairing and building ships for the U.S. military that would then go off and bomb other poor people in other locations. In San Diego, people, Chicanos, Black people, racialized people are both the resource of militarization and the object of militarization. I grew up going to public schools in San Diego, and when I got to high school, and it was a high school that was predominantly Chicano, Black, students of color, working class, they had a program called JROTC. Some of you might be familiar with this program, the Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps, and I'm happy to talk about this more as we go on in the conversation. But essentially what drew me to this political consciousness was being targeted by the military. I was targeted by the military. My friends were targeted by the military. We were essentially segregated, placed in JROTC without our consent. Like, we would show up the first day of class, see our schedules, and, what is this? What is this JROTC? No, this was happening at the same time that they were removing our academic classes. They were taking away our AP classes. They were taking away AVID. They were further segregating us. They had military recruiters present on our campuses constantly. Some of you, some of the students here might, this might be familiar to you and your situation, your school. But this was happening at my school. This was happening to me, to my friends, and it was through student organizations like MECHA, el Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano, Xicana de Aztlán, that I was able to learn about the Chicano movement, the anti-war movement, the Xicana Moratorium, that inspired me and led me to think, hey, what happened, in 1970 is still happening today, just in a different way. The system is creative. It reinvents itself. It's innovative. It's always changing. And the same thing, perhaps through different strategies, was happening when I was growing up, when I was in high school. So I got involved with MECHA. I got involved with organizations like Project Llano, which I'm happy to talk about. And that's sort of how I became into to political consciousness. Just the other day, a Facebook memory popped up. It was a picture of me and some elders from Barrio Logan, some of elder muralists from Chicano Park. They had invited me in 2010 to the 40th anniversary of the Xicana Moratorium in East LA. And there's a picture of us marching. But it's such an important event and movement to keep alive, especially as we continue to face militarism and militarization today in our communities.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gracias, compañeras, compañeros. What we'll do now is we'll have 10 minutes, and I'll be for the whole next step. But thank you. Let's hear for that wonderful introductions that we heard from our compañeros.
Yeah. And we were going to ask about identity, but I think you provided a good conversation piece that is what it is, right? There's labels imposed on us versus, and then the heart, right, of an identity as a Chicana. So just for the sake of time, we won't go into that question for the rest, but you mentioned the JROTC, and we know what's coming, the proposal of the automatic enrollment in the draft for our sons and our babies and our grandsons and our brothers. If you can each speak on that, and we'll do 5 minutes each for that. We'll do 5 minutes each, and just speak on that in terms of what can we do as a community to fight back on that? What can we do? Is because it's institutional facing and then information facing. How many of our very young men of color know that this is coming up, right? And so let's maybe go this way.
This way,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak on this issue. As I mentioned earlier, I'm part of an organization called Project Llano, the Project on Youth and Non-Military Opportunities. And its sister organization, COMD, or the Committee Opposed to Militarism in the Draft. These organizations, based in San Diego, but that really have an outreach across the country. There are very, unfortunately, few remaining counter-recruitment organizations that are doing this work. Now, these organizations are a result of the Xicana movement, of the anti-war movement, like all these activists who faced this and who wanted to keep this work going. What is it that happened that after conscription or the draft was eliminated, things got way more sinister. It got scary. The military now had the job of recruiting an all-volunteer army, so they turned to more sinister strategies to do this. I mentioned JROTC earlier. JROTC is one example of that. Now, JROTC has been around since the early 1900s, but it was in the 1980s, late 1980s, early 1990s, when the program expanded significantly. Why? Because the then Chief of Joint Staff, Colin Powell, announced publicly that JROTC was the solution to undisciplined Black and brown kids in urban communities. And that set it off. That made the program expand completely. And the program now has over 500,000 students across the country, predominantly in schools that are racialized, that are working class. So there are so many strategies that the Pentagon, that the state is using to recruit our communities. Now, in regard to this, the threat of a future draft, right? There are several bills going on right now. Why is this? Because Gen Z, the newer generations are like, we're not gonna stand for that. There's actually a recruitment crisis, and this should be celebrated. This is great. The younger generations are seeing through the right?
Yes. Yeah.
This should be celebrated, and the military is freaking out. They're like, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna continue to hold power over the world? How are we gonna continue to flex our military might? So they're always thinking of new ways to keep recruiting people. And one of these ways is this threat of a future draft. Now, if I can speak specifically about this, what the bills that are proposed, for example, there's one in California that would essentially automatically enroll people who go through the DMV, get their license. The DMV would have the power essentially to enroll young men in the selective service program. Now, what is this? What is a selective service program? As of now, sometimes, in some cases, young men are already asked to sign up for this program to receive financial aid from the government, from the state, right? Now, in case there was a future draft, now there isn't a draft at the moment, but in case there was a future draft, the Selective Service Agency would be the agency that would manage the draft, right? So there isn't a draft yet, but we have to see and understand these bills and these attempts to bring back the draft as a fascist future. Like, this is something that we have to be really wary of. It's all pointing towards a future that wants to further recruit and militarize our communities, use them as cannon fodder for the work of empire, for ongoing colonization like what we're seeing in Gaza, in Palestine, and many other places around the world.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. And yes, I'm glad you brought up the financial aid because I teach in Raza Studies, but I'm also an academic counselor, and absolutely, students, in order to receive federal financial aid, they have to sign up for selective service. The men do, and so yes, the strings are there for sure. Santi, what are we gonna do?
Well, it makes me think about a lot of things, right? I think that this conversation, celebration, honoring, and remembering of the Xicana Moratorium, Xicana Moratorium Day is so relevant right now because I think now more than ever do we need to be doing the work of ensuring that our young folks are able to see the connections between what's happening abroad to what's happening here, right? We know that even though the civil rights movement, Chicano movement, and a lot of the work that happened in the 90s has gained us a lot of wins. Anything from ethnic studies to like in Oakland, kicking police out of schools. We also know that one of the faults of the movement is that oftentimes we do a lot of work, but we don't actually have a strategy to ensure that we oversee the implementation of those wins, right? And so we have a lot of these wins that oftentimes are not causing the impact that we wanted them to cause, right? We have a lot of ethnic studies classes, a lot of ethnic studies programs that are refusing to talk about Palestine. Yes. What kind of ethnic studies program is that when you're refusing to talk about what is happening in Palestine?
That's right.
And so, I think this is a perfect moment in time when we need to make these connections, right? We know cop cities are down the pipeline. We know that there is a move to expand youth prisons. We know that there is a move to expand prisons. And we also know that there's a lot of wins, right? We know that we have shut down some youth prisons. We know that we have shut down the expansions of prisons, right? But all these fights are still coming down the line. And we need to make sure that our young people are aware of these fights, that our communities are aware of these fights, and that they see through the vice that it's out there, right? Right now, when we're talking about the elections, we know that, a Black woman president, right, who is committed to continuing supporting Israel military, right, defending Israel, right? And so we need to be aware of how these things play out and what does that mean for our folks locally, right? And in the same way that a lot of us got politicized, in the same way that a lot of us got the fire lit under us, we need to continue doing that work with our young people right now, right? We know that the violence out here in the streets of Oakland ain't no joke, right? We know that poverty right now and houselessness ain't no joke, right? And in these moments of struggle are the perfect opportunity and perfect moment to engage some of these fights around increasing resources and programming around transformative justice, restorative justice, mental health first, right? Some of these programming to be able to really resource our community and use the assets of our community to build up our folks and be able to see the connections of what's going on. The fact that we have such houselessness is extremely connected to what's happening in the border, to what's happening in Sudan, to what's happening in Palestine, right? All these connections need to be made, and we need to be able to do that in a way where we build power, because that's one of the things that happened for a lot of us, right? We're not helpless in these situations. We have power, and there's a ton of us, right, that need to be doing this work. And so part of that work is for us to be able to mobilize and organize our community in order to do that. Right now, our young people have social media, but unfortunately, we know the way that social media works to blind our young folks and keep them distracted and keep them getting the information that those that are controlling the media want them to get, right? We know that, that it works in such a way. I have this this Vietnamese woman who is a barber. She owns a barbershop down the street. Whew, man. Vietnamese woman who was refugee, first generation, and the rhetoric that she is gaining, right? She says, I don't watch CNN, I don't watch NBC, all of that is fake news. I get all my stuff through social media, right? And she's out here talking about, I will only vote for Trump, right? As a refugee, right? As a Vietnamese woman out here in Oakland, and she's talking about this lie that's been fed and is being fed to a lot of our communities, right? That in order for us to be able to be financially well, we need someone who is going to do the work that only Trump can do. Right. And so we need to be doing that work. Right. We're not talking about going out to Vegas, going out to these blue states that are swing states. We're talking about, or the cities. Right. The work is right here, because even though social media is able to connect a lot of our folks and is allowing a lot of us to be able to see what's happening in other parts of the world, it's because of it's because of what we want to see, right? I always tell my wife, we're in a little bubble. I just go down the street to a cafe and I hear older folks talking about, I don't know what these folks out here doing with encampments. When we were fighting against the war in Vietnam, it was very different. What does Palestine have to do with colleges now? Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so this is in Oakland. Right? This is in Oakland. So a lot of us who are aware of what's happening out here in the world and are making the connections are in a bubble, right? And so we need to do the work. We don't need to go on these bus trips out to other states. We need to be doing the work out here to politicize our young people, to politicize our communities, and to be able to lift the veil of what's happening. And once we do that, social media is a huge power tool for our folks, because it can connect us across the world. And it also shows us all these powerful and amazing creative actions that our communities are taking throughout.
Thank you. Thank you.
The first time I went to a Xicana Moratorium, there was a sunrise ceremony that I attended in the morning, and then there was a concert. And at the time, I lived with my parents, and my dad's Chicano. He's passed away since. But he was recruited into the military as an 18-year-old, which was right before Vietnam. So he didn't go to Vietnam, but his younger brother did. And his younger brother came back heavily impacted. He got cancer. His 2 children got cancer, all because of what he was exposed to in Vietnam. So I think in my family, my dad would defend the military sometimes, because he would say, well, I would have never been able to do any of the things I've done if I didn't have that experience. But then when he realized his brother ended up dying from it, and his brother's children were also impacted, I think that was close to his heart. And he realized that before he passed away, he realized that the U.S. militarism ended up having a bad impact on our family and on the world. I remember showing him a map that I learned about in a meeting that showed how many outposts the U.S. has. And it's like, why do we have military bases in thousands of places when we can't control anything here? We can't take care of people when people are sick. And during COVID, we didn't see FEMA at all. We saw community warriors step up and set up our own testing sites and our own vaccination sites and our own relief centers, because there was no help from the federal government. But there was tons of federal government impact on our communities, taking people away, taking people to jail, prosecuting people for marijuana or other nonviolent crimes. So the federal government is all in our business when we're selling weed or making a business about weed, but the federal government doesn't have contributions to our community when we're in crisis. And I was very happy through the organizing work that I did to be able to have conversations with my dad and bring him data and bring him information and bring him maps to show him, look, you were a part of something and they brainwashed you while you were in that, but look at the impact of what this has done to the land and to the people. And I think that if I had not been a part of the moratorium, I don't know if I would have been able to have the language to have that conversation with him. So I appreciate that he understood that I'm anti-war, and he ended up supporting me. He ended up being proud of me. He clipped all the newspaper clippings of all the times that we got on the front page, and he put a map on the wall with all of the murals I painted and supported the activism that I was doing. And I think that really helped some of the trauma of our family. And I met a lot of people who in similar situations, some of them who are part of an organization called About Face. About Face is a veteran organization. And so they are specifically mobilizing veterans and organizing them to be of service to the community. And so they were the ones who were doing security at Standing Rock. They were the frontline people helping us to make sure that people were safe at Standing Rock. And they have military training and they have military information, but they also have our best interest at heart and know that they had been a part of something and that they have a debt to pay to the society because of their participation in the militarization and in the wars. So what I feel like I want to say about right now is that, the person who wants to run is currently running for the Democratic seat, believes that Oakland loves her and supports her. And that in partial, that is true because people are always happy to know that somebody made it out the hood, right? We're all happy. Well, the day that London Breed became the mayor of San Francisco, we were in a huge fight with the previous mayor. So we were kind of happy to be done with him and happy to have the chance to have a Black woman from the hood to be in charge. But her entire reign has been about increasing police budgets and decreasing youth funding and decreasing services and decreasing food and bringing the numbers down of what is being invested into us and bringing the numbers up of what is being used to buy a RoboCop dog that costs $70,000. In the same budget cycle that they cut youth programming for after school, they bought a RoboCop dog. So I think that, all skin folk are not kinfolk is a lesson that we were taught. And we cannot be disillusioned with the fact that because somebody looks like us, that they're going to be better for us. I do feel like it is our responsibility, though, to be on their helmet 10 times more. Because when they go out in the world and they say, well, I'm from this place and this place supports me, this place is the only one to hold them accountable. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is the place that is going to hold her accountable during her campaign. If she continues to say she has unequivocal support for Israel, it is only Oakland that can check her. It is only the Bay Area that can hold her accountable. And that will improve her. That will make her better. She will be a better candidate if Oakland is on her helmet. But if we see it as just, okay, we won because we have a Black woman in that place, learn from San Francisco's struggle with our mayor. Learn from what we had happen with Colin Powell. Colin Powell looked like he was going to be helpful, but the people who were manipulating him and sending him to do what he was doing, those were not our people. The people that they are listening to are not our people. And so how do we get to the point where they're listening to us? How do we get to the point where they hear what y'all have to say? Because I see it everywhere. The people are saying free Palestine. The people are saying divest from Israel. The people are saying invest in the neighborhood. Everywhere we go, the messages are the same, except for in their platforms and in their campaign speeches. So how do we move ourselves to be heard? And I feel like the people in this room have the answer to that.
Thank you. A lot of truth. And in that, I mean, the connection, right, with Xicana Moratorium, and also that it was the largest anti-war, anti-imperialist people of color protest in the United States. In the last 10 minutes that we have, and this will be the last question, what do you see the future of Xicana Moratorium with its legacy? And because we are an Eastside Arts Alliance and we have around us, right, political art. What is the role of political art in that future? So
let me start with that second part of the question. So I mentioned where I grew up, Barrio Logan, under the Coronado Bridge, where Chicano Park sits in all this grandeur very beautifully. And I grew up looking at these murals that depicted the history of my community and their takeover. They were going to build a cop station in this plot of land under the bridge, and the community came together and said, "Chale, we're not gonna accept that." And they instead said, "We want a space for our people, for our community, for our kids to run around." So they took over the land, and they won, and they established Chicano Park, and it's the largest outdoor collection of murals in the country. And along with Chicano Park, we have the Centro Cultural de la Raza, which reminds me so much of this beautiful space here. I feel right at home. Centro Cultural de la Raza, where I first saw Malaquia Montoya's art during an exhibition there. And so I grew up looking at all this beautiful art and being empowered and seeing, it's like reaching back in time and seeing what the community and elders were able to do before me. Now, fast forward to our current times, what will be the legacy of the Xicana Moratorium? I think that it is our responsibility and it is very important to think very carefully and very critically about militarism and to center it in the work, in the political work that we do. We live in such a society, and even perhaps in the Bay Area that is, seemingly progressive, there exists an imaginary where joining the military for some people is social justice. It's an opportunity for Black and brown kids for mobility. And it's, you were sharing the story of your father, Nancy, and that's so common. Like that happens, like I'm sure many of us here have a family member, know someone who joined the military. And I want to say it's so difficult. Why? Because we're going up against the most powerful entity probably in the history of this planet. Like if you think about the US military, just their budget on what they spent on recruitment, on propaganda, how they harassed our youth via text, via phone calls, those recruiters don't stop calling. They make it so difficult by marginalizing, by making it seem like there's no other options, and then not providing the information that kids should have in order to make an informed decision about the at least next 8 years of their life, where essentially they're like selling their bodies off to the government. Like they make it so difficult. So it's so important for us, I think, to engage in not only political organizing against the military, but also in casual, everyday conversations with our loved ones, with our community members, with our neighbors from around the block, and helping them see that that is not the way, that there are alternatives, and that militarism and the military is connected to so many other issues, to climate change, the biggest polluter in the world. Not to even begin to talk about what the consequences of what's happening in Gaza and Palestine to the planet. Like militarism connects to every single other issue, every single other aspect. Our people knew this. Our people knew this in the 1970s when they got together and they mobilized. And we need to remember this. And as we move forward, we need to organize, continue to organize against militarism, the militarization of our youth and our schools.
Thank you.
And especially pre-documented kids, ¿verdad? That are,
Yeah, man, for real. I went to Skyline. I was in JROTC as an undocumented young person, and they sold a dream, man. They sold a dream. Yeah. If it wasn't for my organizing work and being introduced and engaged in organizing work, I was up in that mess, right? Because you get the house, you get the car, you get the papers, you get it all, right? So they do sell a dream for sure, and we gotta be able to let our kids know, our young folks know that's not what it is, right? And I think that one of the things about Xicana Moratorium is that it taught a lot of really important, beautiful lessons, right? Xicana Moratorium had the art and culture there, right? When you talk about the Xicana Moratorium Day in LA in 1970s, you talk about a wedding, mariachi, the horses, the art, like you talk about it all, right? Tenían la cultura hella alive in that piece, right? And I think culture brings in our people. Culture brings our people alive. It's that luz in this darkness, right? Like Nancy mentioned before, when we see all these pieces of art, just even walking my little one through the gallery down the way, right? She asks all these questions when she sees these things, and my little girl, she knows a lot of things because she asks questions. And one of the things that we don't do is we dumb things down for our young people, but our young people know, they see through the lies, right? My little one every day talks about how's the war in Palestine? How are the children in Palestine? And praying for the children in Palestine, right? They can't get fed a lie because they know what's up, right? Mm-hmm. All we have to do is open their eyes for them to see what's out there, right? Y la cultura, la arte is the way to see it, right? It's an entryway for a lot of our folks, right? I ain't a book person, right? Nancy out here and some of my homies, right? They read up, right? I went to San Francisco State, but I barely made it with the skin of my teeth, right? And I'm not a book person, right? Thank God for me being able to give some workshops and stuff that gave me some credits, because I'm not a book person, and a lot of our young folks are not. the movement doesn't appeal to them in that way, right? But la cultura does, right? And so I think that is the role that art and culture plays, and that was very present and alive when it comes to the Xicana Moratorium, right? Another one of the things about Xicana Moratorium, it was that there was an understanding of macro and micro, right? Of third world and local, and of multi-issue, right? And that's something that we need to understand. We need to understand that it's not a sectoral fight, right? We can't do one thing without doing the other. We can't fight for better conditions in the schools without fighting against the prisons or fighting against the borders or fighting against the war, right? And I have more to say, but I think there's a lot of lessons in the Xicana Moratorium. And I think that one of the things that we need to do is make sure that we're able to learn those lessons and pass those down to the next generation, right? And especially right now that some of our elders are still around and in the mix, we need to be able to continue learning from them. And one of the things that, I feel like I struggle with, Jesse, is that that disciplina isn't there, right? And we need to really be able to learn from some of our elders and the discipline that they had, but also learn from our elders the ways in which the detriment of these cycles kind of pushed a lot of folks away, right? We didn't have that balance or that ability to care for our community and heal our community, and we need to be able to do that healing work too.
Thank you. And Nancy.
I think that when I first learned about the Xicana Moratorium of 1979, I was inspired by the massive number of people who came out that day and who were in the streets and who were in the park and who were watching the folklorico, watching the drummers, the dancers, listening to the music. And I think that's a way that we've all replicated, right? We've hosted concerts, we've hosted gatherings. There's musicians here, there's artists here. And I think that's something that we've carried on. And I think that's something that's precious and something that we need to protect. I also feel like since then, I've learned that it doesn't have to take a mass mobilization to make change. I've learned about direct action. I've learned about civil disobedience. And I feel like there's many more tactics to be used. We don't only have one tool in the toolbox, right? We're Chicanos, we have hella tools in the toolbox. So I think that we have to look at in the future, what types of tactics do we have in front of us? And which are the right tactics to use for the right situations? Civil disobedience is a tactic we all need to study. It's not something that we need to be scared of, right? It is something that we need to understand how to use. Civil disobedience is the act of breaking the law. But how do you break an unjust law? How do you stop an unjust law? You got to break it, right? You can only break an unjust law by breaking the law. And so I want us to learn that. I want us to study not just having a permit for the protest, not just asking permission to take the streets, not just asking nicely, right? There is a time for asking nicely. And then after that, you have to ask more forcefully. And then you have to ask more forcefully. And then you have to win, right? Because lives are at stake and the planet is at stake. And it is our responsibility to defend land and life. That's why we are here, right? That is why we were created. That is our purpose. And many people have tried to dissuade us from that purpose, because they want us to be recruited into their military and they want us to build their bombs and they want us to work for their companies, because we live in a place where the third largest port of this entire country exists and can be shut down by 3 or more people, because that's all it takes. The union has said if there's 3 or more people picketing in front of their job site when they arrive to work, that they will not go to work. So we need to be in solidarity with all the unions that are taking a stance like that, right? Especially the longshoremen's. Yeah. And to see that if they are opening their door like that and saying if there's 3 or more people that are going to picket a location when they show up for work, that they won't go to work, look at the impact that can have on this entire country. And if we are students of history, right, and we are learning about how people have won in the past, South Africa won, right? How did South Africa win? They used an economic boycott. Right? And that is the same strategy that the Palestinian folks have been proposing for years, decades now. They've been saying boycott, divest, and sanction. So I would say it is our responsibility right now to listen to the indigenous people here on this land and say no cop city on Ohlone land. And it is our responsibility to listen to the indigenous people of the Holy Land who are saying that Palestinian people need the right to breathe clean air and drink clean water and exist on the land that they have stewarded since time immemorial. And that means that we personally are accountable because our tax dollars are what is funding this genocide. And so it is our responsibility to look at where the Concord Naval Weapons Base is not very far from here. And that's where they're holding things. And the Port of Oakland is where they're moving things. And so we have to look at what power do we have right now? What do we have in front of us? Who are our allies? And if you need 2 other people to block something, who are the 2 people that you call to meet you at 5 a.m. to go stop some shit? Because you guys all have 2 people who are ride or dies, right? You all have somebody who will come pick you up and take you to wherever you're asking to go. And so let's get ready for that, because it only takes 3 people to stop a ship. And so I would like to say, you know, I'm a board member of the Indigenous Peoples Power Project. We do direct action trainings. We teach kayaktivism. We teach banner dropping. We teach how to climb up cranes and take over cranes and drop banners. If you need to learn that, we can teach you. So if you guys want to check out the IP3 Action Instagram or follow Indigenous Peoples Power Project, you can join one of their trainings or request a training, and they'll bring a trainer to you so that you can have your group have a frank discussion of what type of civil disobedience can we engage in collectively. Are we all willing to sit down somewhere? Are we all willing to stand somewhere? What are we all willing to do as a group? Because really, we move at the speed of trust. And so if we trust each other and we know who we can lean on, those are the people that you can stand anywhere with. And if we are in circles like this of people who I know will stand up for justice, then we can have a huge impact on this planet, because we are positioned to be an impact for this planet. Because at this moment in time, ships are moving in and out of this port. Weapons are being designed right here. The Livermore lab got the contract to build an A-bomb, and we can drive to Livermore. That's not far. So they are currently producing amazing amounts of fucking trash and amazing amounts of pollution. And so all of those places are right within reach. So I would just say we have to study the wins, and then we have to win. We have to fight for the people, you know? So thank you guys.
And the Livermore trash is poisoning all the Central Valley, because the wind is taking all that poison in that direction.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your answers. And the connection, you brought up the Stop Baloney and No Cop Cities in a Lonely Land. And very close to home, I work at Contra Costa College, and it's in San Pablo. It's literally behind the library next to a child care center. And there's if you mentioned Instagram, and it's Stop Aloni City. Let me get the actual one, because there you go. And a couple weeks ago, early in the middle of August, they showed up and provided an eviction notice to the city San Pablo PD for being on Muwekma stolen land. And so just keep an eye out for that, because that's going to require, again, solidarity, and think of the wins that and the inspiration and what we can learn from the Xicana Moratorium. So thank you for your responses.
I think I would just add a closing, and I want to underscore what all our jóvenes has said. Yet is close with what Nancy said. It was hundreds of people that went out on that day 55 years ago, 29th of August. And it's feet on the ground, folks. Social media and all these other tools are great tools, but it's feet on the ground that stops the machine of war and that plants the seeds of peace. So let's get ready to organize.
Feet on the ground, but not on a Saturday or a Sunday, and not with a permit. It has to be feet on the ground when you're actually hitting them in the pocket, because the only way to win is to hit them in the pocket.
In the pocket, that's correct. I think we're getting ready. I don't know if David or Gavilan's gonna have the transition. Oh, Joel, órale. Sí.
I'm going to introduce my compañero, the troubadour of La Raza. To some in the English-speaking world, he could be our Pete Seeger, our Bob Dylan. Órale, Francisco Herrera. Give it up.
La tierra es como mi madre, por eso la quiero yo. La riego cuando ella tiene sed, con agua y con mi sudor. Le canto desde la selva a donde habita el jaguar, hasta la sierra del águila, hasta la playa que besa el mar. América, Shao Hunam, Mashata Hunam Shak, Rio Herta Quinak Shkitikanoa. Shahun, Shkiban, Siwan, Tinimi. America, es continente y no un solo país, porque la indígena lo sembró y la une con su raíz. The earth is my mother, that's why I love her. I quench her thirst with water and with my sweat. I sing to her from the mountains of the jaguar to the forest of the eagle, to the sands that kiss the beach. America is continent and not just one country. Lyrics by Eduardo Robledo from the Chicano time of the Teatro Campesino, with in 3 languages this song, 2 European languages, Spanish and English, 1 American language, Maya Quiche from Guatemala. America, Shao Hunam, Mashata Hunam Shak, Rio Herta Quinak Shkitikanoach, Shahon Shkiban, Siwan Tinimi. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias. Thank you for blessing this space, the sacred land here, Nishan Oloni land. And you know, 55 years ago today, everybody was in mourning. Folks who lived that period would remember that I was 7 years old throwing stones at cars that passed through the highway there, in and out highway of my town, desert town, Calexico, Calesia y Chicali on the border. But you know what? That generation, some of you are here, did win many things. Many times pensamos como que, pues que gacho, esto, lo otro. Pero hay muchos cambios. Por eso existe este cuarto, este salón, ¿verdad? Por esos esfuerzos de esa generación. That generation was willing to go out to the streets and stop business as usual, ¿verdad? Mi papá nació en un garaje. My dad was born in a garage in Calexico, 1929. Pero su generación se organizó. One city halls, one school boards, one all kinds of stuff. Y changes, ¿verdad? Y a mí me tocó nacer en un hospital, so I got to be born in a hospital. But you know what happened? In my town, in Calexico, there's no longer a hospital. And people die in the ambulance going from Calexico to El Centro. So use it or lose it, ¿verdad? And maybe we're only 80 people here, which is great, ¿verdad? But we're dynamite, familia. And that's why we have to get organized. And people are getting organized. That's why you're seeing hundreds of thousands of people crossing 3-4 countries. And I'm gonna ask my good sister, Olga Alamante, to introduce this next song because it's really important. And it's the only one we'll do next. En lo que ella llega, es Olga. And let's welcome Olga with this chant. Caminando, caminando. Do it. Caminando, caminando. Vamos caminando hacia el sol. Vamos caminando hacia el sol. Olga.
Bit of an impromptu presentation here to introduce the next song that Francisco's going to sing for us because we were part of creating it. But I just have to take, a few minutes to just acknowledge that, the Fruitvale district has such an amazing history of activism and organizing Dia del Barrio, organizing against the Baki decision, organizing for the Barlo Benavides, against police brutality. And one of the things that they organized, and I'm so forever grateful, is that they were part of the Olga Talamante Defense Committee that worked to get me out of prison. So I was in prison in Argentina in the mid-70s for 16 months. And it took that long for my parents and other family members and the activists, and many of them are here, who were so involved in that campaign to save my life. And so I am forever grateful, and all I can do to repay is to continue organizing and continue to engage in our community. And I think the compañero already said it. We have a big danger coming in, hopefully not coming in. And I've already lived the repressive nature of brutal regimes when they do not want people to organize and do not want people to have their say-so and do not want people to have their rights. And we have that danger right now. So more than ever, we do have to be united. One of the things that happened during the Orange Man administration is when he separated the children from the parents. You remember that, 2018, the zero tolerance policy. They literally took the kids from the parents in order to deter them from coming into the country. They separated 5,500 children from their families. Many of them have been separated, but still almost 1,000 remain separated. Can you believe that? From 2018, those kids have not seen their families. So we were part of a group, and Francisco's part of that too. It's called the Caravan for the Children. and we continue to advocate for those children. And at the beginning of that whole crisis, we got together as community folks, and then we pulled in the singers, los verdaderos cantantes, Diana Agameros, Liliana Herrera, y Francisco Herrera. We call them the songbirds of the people, los cantantes del pueblo. And we got together, and my good friend Maria X Martinez, may she rest in peace, and I know she's looking down at us, and we said, let's do something in terms of art. Let's advocate for the children with art. And so we came up with a song called Our Children Are Sacred, and I'll turn it over to Francisco.
Pues que viva María X Martínez, ¿sí? ¡Viva! ¡Viva María X Martínez! So to give honor to María, you'll have to sing it. Estábamos en el Federal Building y estábamos diciendo, pues, ¿qué podemos cantar que puede cantar en español y en inglés? Porque vaya, y de ahí nació este verso que... Ready? It goes like this. Our children are sacred. Can you say that? Nuestros niños son sagrados. Our children are beautiful. Bellas son. Our children are a gift. Son el regalo más amado. Our children are sacred. Sagrados son. Cuánta dulzura y valor de una madre y su hija que migra y camina hacia una vida mejor. If this is really the home of the brave, may our gates now be open, for you had the courage to walk through a perilous fight with a child in your arms. Our children are sacred, nuestros niños son sagrados. Our children are beautiful, bellas son. Our children are a gift, son el regalo más amado. Our children are sacred, sagrados son. Y aquí están, cruzando fronteras, y aquí están trayendo la verdad. Son la voz de amor y nuestra conciencia, pues por la violencia cruzando están. Together, ready. Sí. Nuestros niños son sagrados. Children are beautiful, bellas son. Our children are a gift, son el regalo más amado. Our children are sacred, sagrados son. And here they come, eyes wide open to the violence we have caused. They come bearing gifts and healing power, bringing love. Our children are sacred, nuestros niños son sagrados. Our children are beautiful, bellas son. Our children are a gift, son el regalo más amado. Our children are sacred, sagrados son. Y aquí están, llenas de esperanza, de una vida con ganas de amar, pues son las maestras, doctores, artistas, madres, ingenieras de un mundo de paz. Our children are sacred, nuestros niños son sagrados. Our children are beautiful, bellas son. Our children are a gift, son el regalo más amado. Our children are sacred, sagrados son. Sing it. Our children, we welcome and embrace the family, yeah, and give them a love. We declare sanctuary, yeah, building bridges, not walls. Oh, sanctuary. We all belong to the earth. Our children are sacred, yeah. Sagradas son, juntos. Sagradas son, por eso vamos a cuidarlos. Sagradas, quererlos, amarlos. Sagradas son. All right. Gracias. Pues muchas gracias. And from here we move on to our panel. Short announcement. Please visit the Fruitvale History Table. And now we've actually started over here at the Canticle Farm with Caminante Foundation and groups. There are several groups, including Merchant Surge, other folks. We've started the Fruitvale Peace Initiative. So you'll hear more about that soon. Gracias. Ese es mi gavilán. Que se oiga fuerte.